Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello and welcome to Sunday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. If you're feeling charitable, please smash that subscribe button and that like button and go over to my Twitter at Movies TV Mad. We need to talk about Emily, don't we? We really do. We need to talk about Emily Cook, the orchestrator of the whole Day of the Doctor Save the Day rewatch party. Isn't she wonderful? So I've known about Emily for quite a while, but she wasn't really on my kind of consciousness, really. But I knew she was a journalist. She basically works for, well, she's a writer and journalist for the Doctor Who, official Doctor Who magazine. And you can actually follow Doctor Who magazine, which is at DMW Tweets. She's also a broadcast journalist, an assistant producer for BBC Radio Kent, and she's a founder of at Cushy Feet, which I've actually followed. I'll be looking into that a bit more because I'm interested in people, and quite fascinating that this woman has come up with this idea. But then you realise, of course, and listen, if Emily said to me, Mick, go up to Mount Everest in your boxers when it's freezing, right? I think it's always freezing up there, and just stay there for 6 months, I'd probably do it. I think she's great, and I think what she's doing is great. And on is it March the 26th? She's organising the Rose Watch party, which I'm absolutely going to be part of. The positivity is great. And she said a great thing. Isn't it great as Doctor Who fans, we're all nice to each other? Yes, absolutely. Now, as fans, we all have different opinions, right? And when those opinions clash, things can get nasty. Now, I don't want to argue with people about my opinions. The problem is, there is a Doctor Who sheriff's department, mainly Who-tubers who don't believe anyone should ever say anything negative about Doctor Who. I'm sorry, as long as it's constructive, it's cool. They were coming on Twitter yesterday saying that people were going on kind of the posts about Chris Chibnall's birthday and saying negative things and giving death threats. So I thought I'd investigate this, right? And I retweeted a lot of the comments on these threads. And actually, most people, even the people who don't like what Chris has done, were wishing him a happy birthday. I didn't find one death threat whatsoever. So I think sometimes that these Who-tubers who have got good relationships with people within the industry, people who make Doctor Who, like those relationships and want to keep those relationships, and they want to look like the people who love everything. Now, me, for example, when I've been reviewing Doctor Who Season 12, I've tried to be as positive as possible because I've tried to find the positive in those episodes. I think Season 12 is an improvement on Season 11, but I still think it's Dr. Bland. I still think it's a very bland era for Doctor Who and uninspirational. At least his arc was pretty interesting and unique and intriguing. I love the Timeless Child thing. I do. I think it's lots of potential for the future. But unfortunately, I still think it's an arc nobody asked for and nobody needed. And, you know, when you I don't think it's messing with canon personally. But in a way it is when you say, well, actually, hang on a minute, the person we've looked up to for all these years, William Hartnell, is no longer the first Doctor. And I've gone on record before and said I'm okay with this as long as it goes in an interesting place. I actually feel that the Doctor actually isn't the Timeless Child. Again, we've discussed that thoroughly on this channel. And so I think about this and I think what Emily is doing is amazing. But then I think to myself, well, she works, or she certainly writes for, you know, and she's a producer for Radio Kent, but, you know, writer and journalist for Doctor Who magazine. And I look at that and I think, well, Doctor Who magazine is an official BBC Doctor Who magazine. And Emily works for that magazine, right? So I think, what's going on here? Is this something Emily, a Doctor Who fan, is just trying to do while we're all kind of self-isolating, trying to do something nice for the fandom? I'm sure that's the case. But I have to apologise because I'm a half-intelligent person and I have to think about this. Is this an initiative from, you know, someone who's linked into the industry like Emily, who's trying to do something nice? Or is there something deeper going on here? And again, If Emily ever happens to see this, I apologise. I love you, Emily. I think you're amazing. What you're doing is amazing. But as someone with some grey matter, I have to think about this outwardly. I have to think about the fact that you were able to bring Stephen Moffat back on Twitter. Now, even for an hour or two, that is amazing. It's an amazing achievement, but no one's thinking about this on a deeper level and a deeper basis. And I love conspiracy theories, so I'm sorry again, Emily. This is no disrespect to you. I love what you're doing, and I'm going to follow you anywhere. I'm going to go to the Mount Everest in my boxes if you ask me to do it, right? Because I think you're that awesome and persuasive and amazing, right? But that's not the point here. The point here is to be looking out for myself and the fans, and especially the fans who are not happy in the direction the show's going. And so we look at this situation, and I think to myself, obviously, Emily's spoken to Stephen before. Maybe she's interviewed him before for the magazine. So this is an interesting situation now. So then you think, are the BBC so desperate because of what's going on and the negativity that they're just trying to put some positivity back into the fandom? Now, personally, I think that's great. I think that's brilliant. And, you know, while I was hashtagging Save the Day, right? Is it Save the Day or whatever we were hashtagging, right? I didn't think about the coronavirus once. I didn't think about Chris Chibnall, Jodie Whittaker. But it's also interesting that the only person I saw involved in... I saw a couple of people who used to be involved in Doctor Who kind of getting involved with the hashtag and the watch-along. But I don't think I saw Mandip Gill or Tosin Cole, right? Or any of those people who work on the current show getting involved. That's interesting, isn't it? Also, John Barrowman wasn't getting involved because there's a little bit of history between him and Stephen Moffat because obviously I forgot his bloody name already. I'm getting old, you see. John Barrowman was supposed to be in the Day of the Doctor. Something went down between them. And I think that there is an issue there, obviously, and I don't really want to go into that because that's negative. And so the people who were really interested was us, Emily, Stephen Moffat was there, again, which I think is very, very curious because that leads me to my next point, that does Stephen want a way back in to Doctor Who? It seems to me, out of all the previous showrunners, he's the biggest fan. I remember him and Russell T Davies at a Radio Times event being asked, do they still think about Doctor Who stories? And Russell goes, oh, no. Well, maybe. But Stephen was like, yeah, I do. And you can see the man's passion for Doctor Who. So I think he wants a seat back on the table. There's no question about it. After his 6-7 years, he was weary. He was tired. He had had enough of the criticism and the toxicity. And I can't say I blame him because Doctor Who fans are an opinionated bunch. And I put myself in that. There's stuff that Stephen done that I wasn't happy about. I didn't love everything that he did and I constructively criticised that. We will have our opinions and it's hard because the person running Doctor Who clearly is a human being. I hope so. They're not aliens, are they? Anyway, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? But a discussion for another time. So there is that, but ultimately, this is what happens when you have online kind of communities like Twitter and YouTube and places like that, and everyone can kind of get together and talk about these things, and this is what's going to happen, unfortunately. Some people are going to love what you do, and some people are going to hate what you do, and some people just don't have the emotional intellect to separate the fact that you're working on a TV show rather than trying to kidnap children and turn them into Swedish soup or something, right? Swedish soup? Has anyone ever had Swedish soup? But you know what I mean, right? There's just unintelligent people out there, and you always have to accept that. But it's difficult for you. I get hate on my comments sometimes, and it's hard to understand that these are just people who have no emotional intelligence, and just to move on and ignore them. It does hurt. It does wound you, right? So I do believe that Stephen wants a seat back on the table. I don't like the idea of removing people or sacking people. I wouldn't go out there and say, and I suppose I have in the past, that maybe Chris Chibnall should be removed immediately. I think that Chris Chibnall is lost. I think he's drowning and he needs help. And I think just allowing him to carry on his own running Doctor Who is just going to make the situation worse, because I've never seen a level of negativity, even in the times, and I've said it before, one week Stephen could lose the audience, but the next week he'd get them back. Because the community always knew one thing, that Stephen wanted to always put Doctor Who first. Even if he did something we didn't like, we knew his heart was in the right place. What I love about Stephen, and this is what he did via Emily as well, he hyped us up yet last night. He set up this whole new sequence, right? He did it in his house. We knew he did it in his house. We knew he couldn't do much. But let me be clear here. That Strax thing had more personality in it, right? And more life about it than 2 years of the Chris Chibnall era, right? And that's why I call Chris's era Dr. Bland, because it's bland, right? We all know there was always a possibility of casting a female doctor. It doesn't matter. I don't give two hoots if you want to cast a female doctor. I don't care if you want to cast an orangutan as the doctor, as long as they've got a personality and it feels like the doctor, right? But what you don't do, you don't go out there and cast your best mate and then basically write a bland version of the doctor. Do you believe, right, let me ask you a question. If Stephen Moffat was still showrunner and he cast Jodie Whittaker, don't you think she would have been a more interesting doctor? Of course she would have been. It's not about the gender of the doctor. It doesn't matter. There's a dozen female artists out there who could give Doctor Who an amazing zest and life. And Genevieve, right? We know that. We know it's not about the gender, right? And the people going on about the gender should just be ignored. Let's not take them seriously. There's a dozen women. I'd cast Emily as the doctor and she would be amazing if she was written by the right person. But he simply doesn't get it. And he's simply far too political in his mentality and in his storytelling. Now, yes, I know Doctor Who's always been political, but it can't be political 24/7. Everything you do can't be politically, alt-left motivated, because people can see it. Because the problem is with being alt-left or alt-right, it's toxic, and it doesn't work on that side and it doesn't work on that side. And this is what we have now. And there's a hatred to it. And there's a hatred to certain groups of people, whether you're on the right side or on the left side. The right, not in the correct side, but the right. You understand, right? I don't go for that. I don't go for alts, right? I'm a centrist, right? And I'm not a passionate politician, and I'm not that interested in politics either, right? Basically, Chibnall, I'm forgetting names left, right and centre here. It's just the excitement from last night, and it was an amazing night. I believe that Chris Chibnall needs help, and I know that the BBC know it. The BBC, look, the BBC know what's going on isn't right. Everybody knows. Even the people who don't say anything negative, right, and want to be kind of not involved in the distasteful toxicity going on right now. But at the end of the day, everybody knows what's going on with Doctor Who certainly isn't working. Now, I don't know if Mandip Gill's staying, and it's true that two of the companions are leaving, aka Bradley Walsh. We love Bradley. Me and my dad watch The Chase every night, right? He's brilliant. But it still hasn't worked as a companion because there's no fleshing out. There's no interest. Bland. And obviously Ryan hasn't been fleshed out. Bland, right? So there's nothing there. Mandip Gill's character, a little bit fleshed out in season 12, but still very, very bland. And our Doctor is very, very bland. You can't blame the actors for that. You can't blame an orchestra for a bad piece of music. You've got to say to the conductor, the person who created the music, that was a bit boring, right? And even the music we get in Doctor Who, right, from Sagon Akinola, is a lot more blander, compared to what we got from Murray Gold. We all know these factors, right? We all know these factors. And he needs help. And I believe the best thing for everyone concerned, and I do believe Stephen's interested in this, the best thing for the BBC, the best thing for the fans, the best thing for this kind of core franchise is if Stephen Moffat is co-executive showrunner, co-executive producer, so they can work together, and work out ideas of it from each other. I think it could work. I don't think the BBC are going to sack Chris Chibnall, right, and bring someone in urgently. That would be very messy. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with schedules. Everything's going to be delayed. Everything's going to be a year out now and year delayed. So it's it's one of those times where we can't help that. But I do know one thing, that Chris Chibnall creatively is drowning. And he did come up with a good idea with the Timeless Child. And it does create more potential, but you're literally changing everything that we believe about the Doctor. Now, as I say, I don't believe the Doctor is the Timeless Child, which would kind of make the whole thing pointless in a way, but who knows, right? But I do believe the best thing for Doctor Who is if Stephen Moffat helps Chris Chibnall on an official basis, because what we got last night from Stephen Moffat and his passion and everything he was telling us about what he had planned for the Day of the Doctor just shows you he is a fan. He has this imagination, this zest, this Genevieve, anyway, whatever. Genevieve, I'm not going to talk French anymore, right? But basically, Doctor Who needs Stephen Moffat, because Stephen Moffat seems to be the only one willing to even put his name on Doctor Who, right? RTD ain't coming back. He's not interested, right? So I would say that something along those lines will happen. I think from what we're seeing from Emily, who does work with the Doctor Who magazine, let's not forget that, that is linked with the BBC. They know there's low morale, you know, within the fandom and within the production as well of Doctor Who. They can't spin it. They can't lie about that anymore. So what happened last night was beautiful, positive, and I said last night during the watch-along, I'm not going to talk about what I hate about Doctor Who. I'm going to talk about what I love. But at the end of the day, morale is high. But then we have got another interesting situation. Will there be a situation where maybe Emily suggests a Chibnall era episode to watch along? Do I really want to be involved with that? And that's another decision I'm going to have to make on basically a later date. But we'll see, because at the moment the plan is for March the 26th to watch Rose, and then the 11th hour. I can't remember what the date is for that as well. So that's very exciting. If I was Emily, I would really keep away from the Chibnall era, because that is just going to bring the hate back. If the plan is to go back to the things people love, get some positivity, then try and spin us into kind of all of a sudden being amazed at what Chibnall's done, it simply isn't going to work. And the only thing that will work right now is for someone to save Chris Chibnall from drowning. Please like, share and subscribe, comment down below, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more Doctor Who Daily. See you again soon.